Hey, what's going on guys, it's Hanson here. So we're back with a brand new video and we're going to talk about sessions in Express. So sessions are very important because they'll also allow us to maintain the state of HTTP requests. The major difference between sessions and cookies are that sessions live on the server and cookies live on the client side. Now, the reason why you would need sessions, there are a lot of different reasons, but the major reason is because you don't want to save any of your data as a cookie, like anything that's sensitive. So for example, a username and password, you don't want to save that as a cookie on the client. You want to save that on the database, so that way the session knows which user is making that request. So essentially, sessions are more secure because they're stored on the server rather than having everything stored on the client. So I think honestly the best way to show you guys how it works is by providing an example in Express. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So you want to first make sure you install Express Session, which is a session middleware. It's going to handle generating session IDs for us and signing the session IDs or the cookie. So we're going to go ahead and import session, and you can actually just get rid of cookie parser like it just did. We don't need that anymore because Express Session will take care of parsing the cookies for us. Okay, well in this case it's going to be the session ID. Alright, so now that we've imported Express Session, we're going to go ahead and register the session middleware. So that's session parentheses, and then we're going to pass in an object. And this object is going to take in a couple of properties. We're going to take in the secret. So this secret is used to sign the session ID cookie. So you can name it whatever you want. I'm just going to name it some secret. And we're going to go ahead and pass in the cookie property and the max age. So we're going to set this cookie to expire after, let's just say 30 seconds. So that's 3,000 or 30,000 milliseconds. And we're going to go ahead and set save uninitialized to false. So you want to make sure you set this to false if you have like a login system. Otherwise, it's going to generate a new session ID every single time they make a request to your server. And you don't want that sometimes. All right, so now that we've registered our session middleware, I'm going to go down over here. And I'm just simply going to make a app.post route. And we're going to have a simple login route. And I'm just going to send a 200 response. Okay, cool. So we're going to make a post request. So that's localhost port 3000/login. So you'll see that we actually do not receive a cookie back. And the reason why is because we haven't modified the session yet. Okay, what I mean by modifying the session is that we're just visiting, right? We haven't logged in. We haven't told the session, hey, look, this person is trying to log in. Okay, so there are a couple ways that you can handle this, but I'll show you a lower level implementation of this. We're going to expect the user to send in a username and password for the request body. So we'll do username, Hanson, password 123. So we're going to send these credentials over to this route, and I'm going to just get them from the request body. And I'm going to first make sure that these values are truthy. And what I want to do is I want to check to see if request.session authenticated. So before I do anything else, I know this might seem a little bit confusing, but let me actually just console log session ID first before I do anything else, just so I can show you what it looks like. You can see that we have this random string. If I click send again, it's going to be different. And the reason why you can see right over here we don't have a cookie is because we have save uninitialized set to false. So let's just say if I actually set this to true, if I were to make a request, you're going to see now I'm going to get a cookie back. But right now this session ID is stored in memory. So let me actually save and let me run this again. So we restart our server, so we have a new cookie. But you can see that this is the session ID. If I click send again, it's going to be the same one. Okay, but obviously we don't want that because the user hasn't logged in yet. So sometimes you don't want to generate a session ID if they're not actually logging in. All right, so I just cleared my cookies, so I should send this and I shouldn't receive a cookie. Good. All right, so now if I send it again, it's going to be different every single time. Okay, so the main point that I'm trying to get to right now is if we modify this session object at all, that means that this session ID is actually going to be saved and sent back to the client. When I say save, I mean it's going to be saved to the memory store. So, for example, let's say if I check to see if rec.session.authenticated, so if this property exists on the session object, which it currently doesn't, but if it does, that means they have logged in. So we'll just do res.json rec.session. So we'll just send back some JSON. Now, if this property does not exist, What we'll do is we'll check to see if let's do password is equal to 123. Obviously this isn't a real application, so we're just hard coding the check. But in the real application, what you would do is you would take the raw password, you would hash it and compare it to the password that's hashed in the database. But just for demonstration purposes, we're just going to do this check. So pretend like we are checking to see if the passwords are the same, and if they are, then we're going to say, hey, look, you're authenticated. So we're going to modify the session object by attaching a property to rec.session, and I'm just going to simply do rec.session.user equals username password. Obviously you wouldn't want to send the password back, but we'll just do it just for this video. Okay, so if the passwords are not the same, we'll just send back a status of 403 bad credentials. Okay, and if let's say if they don't pass in a valid, we'll just do the same thing, res.status 403. So let's try this out. So I'm gonna go ahead and just send username. You're gonna see it says bad credentials. I'm going to go ahead and send 1234 for the password. It should say bad credentials. Now I'm going to just type 123. So now see how it's going to send us back a cookie. And you see how over here that we have all of our data for the session, right? The original max age. So this is when the cookie is going to expire. So it should expire in about a couple seconds. And then, yeah, you can see when it expires, you can see authenticated set to true, and then the user object. Now this next part is going to be a little bit confusing, so I'm gonna have to kind of do it first and then explain it. But what we're gonna do is we're going to use a store for our sessions. So we're going to just do const store equals new session.memory store. So the session module has a class called memory store. So we're going to create a new instance of memory store. And if you want to set up a store, you can just pass in the store property and then set it to our store up here. But since they're the same name, we can just do store like that. So now what I'm going to do is inside this middleware function. So remember, this was the middleware function that we implemented, I think, in 2 videos ago in the middleware episode. But what I'm going to do is every single time we make a request, I'm going to just print out store. And you can see we actually have a bunch of methods that we can call, but I'm just going to print out store just to show you guys what store looks like. And this is what the store will look like in our database when we build a full stack app. So I'm going to make a request. So I should have received a new cookie. Yep, there we go. And you can see right over here, store doesn't have anything. I'm going to send another request. Okay, so now look over here. You can see right over here for store, for sessions, you can see that we have this cookie ID. And it matches, it should match this one right over here, though. Let me just see if I can move this out the way. So let's see, yep. HUS and then a bunch of other characters. You can see that this matches with this part right over here. So there are a bunch of other characters after it, but let me actually do this. Let me show you this. Let me console log rec.session ID. Okay, so our server restarted. We received a new cookie. Okay, so see how over here I have this cookie, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and click send. And now see, this is right in the store, and this is our session ID. So you see how our session ID is corresponding to whichever user made the request. You see all this data over here. This is all a JSON string. Here we have the cookie, we have when it expires, and we have additional data that we attached onto the session object. So whenever the session object has been modified, it's going to save it to the store automatically. So you can see over here we have user and username Anson. So hopefully this part makes sense. I know it can be a little bit tricky, and I know it took me a while before I finally understood sessions, but I promise you it's nothing super crazy. But when we actually build out an application, it's going to make so much more sense. But all you need to know right now is whenever we make a validated request, whenever we successfully log in, it's going to modify the session object, and then it's going to save that session into either the database or memory. In our case, it's saving it to the memory store, so not a database. And now that we have the session saved, it's going to send it also to the client, so we can use that cookie and make requests over and over again. And we can check that cookie every single time to see who's making the request, to see which request is associated with this cookie. And we can look in our store and we can say, hey, look, this is the request ID, or this is the request session ID, and I can see right over here the user that this belongs to is right over here. Again, I really hope this video made sense. If you guys have any questions, feel free to just leave a comment and I'll try my best to clarify. Typically, if you're using something like Passport, you don't really have to worry so much about how these things work at a low level, because Passport will just take care of it for you. But I just wanted to show you how this works underneath the hood so you guys get a better understanding of how Passport generally works. But yeah, anyways, so that was pretty much it for this video. So I'll see you guys in my next one. Peace.